In a world where women are often expected to prioritise harmony over honesty, self-silencing has become an all too common behaviour. Many women suppress their thoughts, their emotions and their own needs to maintain, relationships, avoid conflict. But research shows this habit doesn't just affect our confidence, it's got serious consequences for mental and even physical health. Studies are linking self-silencing to an increased risk of depression, chronic illness, even cancer. So joining us today is Christina Ioannidis, who is a renowned public speaker, trainer and consultant, to explore why women self-silence, how it impacts our well-being and our careers, and of course, what you can do to break the cycle. Thank you for raising this topic, because I'm sure every woman listening to this today will identify to some extent about not speaking up, not acknowledging their feelings, not feeling heard in a room. But can we start with the basics? To your mind, what is self-silencing and how does it show up in women's daily lives, Christina?
Brilliant. Thank you very much, first of all, for having me, Helen.
You're welcome.
I've been working a lot with women since 2007, and it's become increasingly dominant, in my view and in my experience, that women feel, like you say, they're not being listened to, but also they suppress. So self-silencing is the act of suppressing their expression of emotions in order to maintain what would be the socially acceptable behavior of being a pacifist or non-confrontational.
Can you give us some examples? Can we start with the workplace, how that might show up or ironically not show up?
Well, there we go. A great choice of words, not show up. It's the fact where women, for example, when they're looking at promotions or when they're looking at something is happening in their career path, they don't actually speak to their managers about whatever is bottling them or impacting them negatively, but just hold it in. Mm-hmm. In the household, it's about arguments with spouses and not putting forward their views and their needs, but bottling them up. And even with family, it's exactly the same.
So what are some of the key reasons to your mind why women self-silence? Is this a learned behaviour or are there some deeper societal forces at play?
It's a combination of both in my experience. And there's certain parts of the world, like here, where there is a bit more of this is how you need to behave. Southern Europe, Middle East, and certain other geographies in the world, there is a little bit more of the women, Japan, women may need to be more submissive rather than being forward. Whereas in the West, we have, in the UK, in the US, it is okay to speak up. But even there, and that's where the research comes in, the research in the US is that over 4,000 women that were followed over 10 years who did not express themselves, they had, in fights, for example, with spouses, they were 4 times likely to die.
So serious links then with health, depression, chronic illness.
Exactly.
To your mind and to this research, why is suppressing emotions and needs, how does it have such a profound impact on the body?
Well, and there's a great author then, psychologist Gabor Mate, who's written all about this as well. It all comes down to the fact that we're building chronic stress. Our cortisol levels go up because we are actually inadvertently, as we are bottling up our emotions, we're inadvertently building up our cortisol levels. So we're living, as I often call it, in a cortisol crisis. Mm-hmm. Now you throw in all the life challenges that we have and marital and relationship challenges that we have either in the workplace as well, then that becomes an ongoing cycle that keeps building. And we really need to break it. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because it is an important part of the breaking process that we talk about it, that it is an issue.
How have you experienced this yourself? I mean, as I said, you're a trained speaker. I've had a message about public speaking, which we will come to. Have you experienced this in your life? Because I certainly have.
Do you know what's really interesting? Part of the self-silencing mode is that we're expected to condone and adhere to certain norms, such as being caretakers and caregivers. Mm-hmm. I've been thrown into a caregiving role because I lost my mother during the COVID pandemic and have been caring for my father. And I've realized the frustrations of being thrust in a completely new world and expectations, I've had to really manage myself in order to limit the impact on my health. And so that's why it became very prominent to me, and I became very conscious of it. Then, in addition to the work that I do as a health coach, but also as a trainer and speaker, as you mentioned earlier, I've realized that there's actually a lot of women out there who are holding themselves back, inadvertently again, even around things to do with their career and how they can progress forward.
I know it's ironic, given what I do for a living, but absolutely. I self-silence all the time. I mean, the boardroom just out there, I've been in meetings in there and thought, I've got an idea, or I don't agree with that, and just have not spoken up, and then beaten myself up about it, the whole way home. Should have said that. Why didn't you say that? Or even, speaking to guests, or I don't want to offend anybody, or it's really, really common. And then I think in the home, maybe not so much with my kids, but, certainly with my husband, it's taken me more than 10 years of marriage to really be able to, in my mind, call him out on his stuff and be confident with that.
Exactly. And stand up for yourself. I mean, I call it owning the space, the stage, your environment, because it is that. Now, on that note about the boardroom, there's been research in the US between 1994 and 2008 where they looked at, and you like this, women in the Senate. And women in the Senate in the US were 10 times more likely to be interrupted in Senate committee hearings than the men.
We're going to delve into this further. Any thoughts on this? Get in touch. Christina with us through until 4 o'clock today. We've had a message asking about a job interview where she needs to do a 5-minute presentation on a subject of her choice and she needs some ideas. Thank you for that. Also on 4001 saying there's a lady in her office and she speaks so quietly it's almost like a breathy whisper. We've had complaints and we don't know what to do about it. Unpacking that. And I'm curious, how does this intersect with people pleasing? I'm really curious to get your take on this, guys. 4001, women of the UAE, do you self-silence? How are you planning to navigate that? And if you do need some actionable tips, then you're in the right place. Have you ever held back a thought, an idea, or a strong feeling to keep the peace? Many women do, whether it is in the boardrooms or friendships or relationships. And this phenomenon is known as self-silencing. It's deeply ingrained in gender norms and expectations. And studies show it can lead to serious health risks, including, as we touched on earlier, chronic disease and depression. Joining us in studio, we've got Christina Ioannidis, who is a leading expert in leadership and diversity, health and empowerment. And she's helping us understand why self-silencing happens, its hidden dangers, and yes, how women can reclaim their voices without jeopardising relationships or careers. So how can it affect women in professional settings, Christina? It sounds like it's really going to limit your career growth or influence opportunities. For people that are listening to this going, I am that person that doesn't speak up in the boardroom. I am that person that doesn't put themselves forward for promotion or negotiate that rise. What steps can you take without, as I said, upsetting the apple cart?
Yes, absolutely. Well, firstly, if you're interrupted or you're not given the airtime, you have to claim that airtime. So it is about, and I don't like the words lean in, but it is about us leaning in a bit. And when we do that, it's about being conscious of the fact that we might be doing something that is uncomfortable to us, but it's important that we're heard.
So I'm just trying to borrow some language from you.
Yes.
So if you're in the boardroom or you're in a meeting or you're on a Zoom or in an interview, you said before about women in the Senate of all places being interrupted 10 times more than the men. Is it a case if someone interrupts you to say what? I wasn't quite finished, let me continue. What do you say?
Precisely. Yes, you don't have to be confrontational because that's one of the problems. Is because in a macho world, it is very, very typical of the male behavior to do the interrupting thing. Guys interrupt each other all the time. Us women, we find this very, unacceptable. It's not right. We are very democratic and we like to give airtime to whoever and be respectful to whoever is speaking. But it's a normal banter that men do. So if you get interrupted, it is absolutely the case that you can say, may I just complete my sentence? What I was saying is A, B, C, D. And so when I say lean in, is literally also leaning in. One of the things that I see very often, physically speaking, is that women very often sit back rather than moving forward towards a table, that is. Putting your elbows on the table, leaning in, making notes, and also being physically more there, using up space. Us women tend to have, on average, a tendency to kind of make ourselves look smaller. And so it is against our normal natural instinct to say, right, I'm going to own my space, and I'm also going to be confident in how I speak. And I'll come back to that point in a sec.
Well, we've had some messages for you, Christina. So if you do want to reach out on this, please let us know. It's uncomfortable, though. And it's only by maybe practicing. Does it become more comfortable?
Yes, it is practicing. I mean, I run part of my coaching and my professional work as a professional speaker and trainer. I actually work on TED level speaking skills for women. And it is amazing the transformation that someone who feels like they can't be heard because they have a very quiet voice, to kind of get them to stand up and own that stage or own that space. And frankly, it is down to being mentally there and saying, I'm going to do this, because women can do anything they put their head to. You know, from the moment we can have children and we can reproduce, we can do anything. As far as I'm concerned, there's nothing more difficult than motherhood.
But I think so many women feel like they're blocked. And I don't want to get kind of a bit woo-woo and chakra about it, but that throat chakra can be like, I have a thought, but I can't get it past my throat. Does that make sense?
Yes, and it's a psychological limitation. This is a self-silencing piece. I can't, meaning I really don't want to get it out for some reason. Now, it could be trauma. It could be because I want to keep it. I want to not jeopardize my relationships. But there are times, and this is where I go back to the health impact, there are times where we have to think about number one, and that's you.
Oof, right. We are going to go to the text line next. We've had messages about public speaking. We've had, exactly as Christina was just saying there, a query about a colleague with a breathy whisper and it's causing problems in the office. And no name on this one saying, could therapy help improve my confidence at work? I'm sick to death of my low confidence holding me back. I'm stopping myself from moving up the ladder and I'm seeing my peers progress around me while I've been stuck in the same spot for years. Anonymous. Women are often praised for being agreeable, nurturing, selfless. But at what cost? Research is suggesting that when women suppress their needs, their opinions and emotions to fit into societal expectations, it can lead to both mental and physical consequences, increasing a risk of depression and even cancer. Joining us today is Christina Ioannidis, who is an internationally recognised speaker herself, so who better to ask about this, a trainer and a consultant who works with women to help them step into their power. Shall we go to the text line, Christina?
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
we've had some really interesting messages on this. C says, good timing. I have an interview next week in a totally different field to any I've worked in previously, but I've got a lot of transferable skills. The role will require attention to detail, communication, empathy, and public speaking. So part of the interview is a 5-minute presentation, no PowerPoint, on a subject of my choice. I've got no idea what to talk about or how to best present myself. I want it to be good, but I think it's more to do with how I say it rather than the content, if that makes sense. Any tips or ideas?
Great question, and I wish we had more time because there's definitely a lot of stuff to cover. So number one, if they're looking at the how, then you can say anything, right? The important thing is the confidence by which you say it. Now, I am very impressed by the way that this individual highlights her, I presume it's a she?
It is a she. Yes.
Shares her transferable skills. So why not demonstrate those transferable skills by talking about some of the projects and what you have completed and what the output of those projects were for your previous employers, those particular skills that you highlighted. And number one is just be confident. You don't need PowerPoint slides. In fact, one of the things that we will talk about, which happens to really impact women, is the imposter syndrome. One of the things I do with my coachees is we go through and we look at what strategies can they put in place to address that. And number one is you've got to believe that you can do it. And you've done things in the past that have shown you that you're very strong. So you've got this. And number two is when you are standing up in front of the people that you're presenting to, very important, as I said, physically to take up more space, chin up, and physically shoulders back, and physically look confident. The rest will come.
Love that. Good luck. Keep us posted. Anonymous message here saying there's a lady in our office and she speaks so quietly. It's almost like a breathy whisper. We've had complaints when on Teams calls when she's on the phone where people can't hear her, but she won't speak up. We've worked with her confidence, but she says she is and does seem very confident. It's just how she speaks and won't be changing. It unfortunately got to the point where we started the process of managing her out of the business because a huge part of the role is speaking with clients. And she definitely wasn't as quiet as this when she interviewed and first started. I feel terrible about this, but what can we do?
Well, I love this because, again, it's very common for us women. First of all, they can reach out to me.
I'll send you Christina's details, Anonymous.
Yes, please do. But secondly, again, I get this very, very often. Very often it's the imposter syndrome that is holding them back. But at the same time, it is that physicality that I'm talking about. One of the things that we are never taught is to project.
Well, how can you teach us now?
So, very quickly. I mean, one of the things that I never do when I do trainings is use a microphone. Because I have to project. I have to learn to be able to fill the room with my voice, right? And this is what every professional speaker has to do. You know this, Helen, better than I do. When you have a mic, you can hide behind it. So that's number one, is start learning or practicing to project. Sit in a meeting room and just talk louder, much like I can't do it now because I'll obviously put people's ears out, but you know.
I can turn your mic down if you want to do it.
Okay, you can do it. Well, you're actually projecting more. Right?
Okay, so that actually, I could hear, even though I'm wearing headphones, I could hear Christina's voice almost behind the back of my head then.
Yes, exactly. So fill the room. And number two, as I said, is that physicality aspect of having that confidence, of leaning in, sitting up tall and strong. That will then help the diaphragm open up more, and you'll be able to take deeper breaths. And another thing that I think is curtailing your colleagues' speaking is how is she breathing?
100%. So I sing now.
Ooh.
I know, and I love it. And it's really fascinating. If my knees are locked and my body is rigid, my ability to actually take in a full lungful of air is completely compromised. Whereas if my legs are loose and I feel kind of a bit more kind of connected in my body, then you can hold a note for 50% longer.
And that's one of the ways that you see stress. When we're stressed, the cortisol makes it that we actually breathe much more shallow, in a much more shallow fashion than we would if we were relaxed. That's why when you do yoga, when you do Pilates, there's a lot of emphasis and focus on breathing in and breathing out. When we're stressed, we tend to do superficial breathing, which impacts our confidence it impacts the way we talk, which is then perceived as lacking confidence.
Interesting. Okay, Anonymous. It sounds like this colleague of yours might need some one-on-one time with our guest of the hour. Anonymous message here, and it's not necessarily relating to self-silencing, but certainly confidence is a big part of this. Saying, could therapy and which therapy improve my confidence at work? I'm sick to death of my low confidence holding me back. I'm stopping myself from moving up the ladder, and I'm seeing my peers progress around me while I've been stuck in the same spot for years. Oh my goodness, that makes me really sad.
Yes. First of all, it takes guts to ask this question, so well done for asking it. So number one, you have become conscious of that something is holding you back, right? So well done for appreciating that. Number two, you can take actions. Reach out to me. Obviously, Helen can share my details, but it is about appreciating what you can bring to the table. One of the biggest hurdles that women face, which we're never taught, is negotiating.
Definitely.
It's putting our views forward in terms of what's my value? So one of the things that I actually spend a lot of time with my coachees is how much are you worth and how are you communicating that credibility?
Now, I want to ask a little bit about crises of confidence and when they can happen. Because I think for a lot of women, it can be this idea of going back to work after having a baby. Maybe there's been a relationship change. Maybe it's a new country. Maybe you've arrived in the UAE and you were absolutely smashing it in your home country, but now you don't quite understand the hierarchy of the office or how business is done here. And then, of course, something you speak a lot about is perimenopause and menopause. Do you see any ages or stages where women might start to self-silence?
Do you know what's interesting? I think women self-silence right across the career path. What I think women tend to do is when they hit that perimenopause phase, they start becoming more conscious of, hold on, what am I doing here? Why am I putting up with some stuff? Right? Whatever that might be.
In a marriage or at work.
Exactly. And that's what we're seeing increased incidence of divorces. And I know you had a guest earlier talking about specifically that. And I think that's very interesting in that we have a realization that actually, hold on, it's my time to do something for me. And that's where it's very powerful when we talk about, I'm a midlife woman, I put my hand up, I'm over 50, I'm 52, and I've had that rebirth, and I really do feel that this is something that's very powerful for women. Now, what we need to do is make sure that we do it right across the career path where we feel that confidence and are able to own our stage and our story.
So, Christina, lastly, what message would you like to leave women listening today who might be struggling with self-silencing?
That they can overcome it. First of all, well done if you're conscious of the fact that you are doing it. The second part is no woman deserves to be put down or interrupted. You've got amazing stuff to say, and everyone can be inspired by what you have in store. So I would invite the women to join. We actually have an event tomorrow where we're doing, it's called the Female Majlis, Owning Your Stage, Your Story, and they can join the event as well because it is about building the confidence to say, you know what, I can be an inspiration to my family, to my daughters, to my cousins, to my workplace.
Matthew is saying something that helps me that I was coaching is to challenge the limiting belief that you can't. Ask yourself if that thought process is true. And that's exactly right. Whether you say I can or I can't, that is true because once you say I can't, that limiting belief starts to become true.
Absolutely, you'll make it true. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Christina, if people want to send me the word, what word should we choose?
For what? Sorry.
If people want to get your details, should we choose power?
Absolutely.
Yeah, send me the word power and I'll send you details of Christina and this event tomorrow. Where and when is it taking place?
DIFC Academy, 6:30 to 8:30.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
really
Helen.
Appreciate it. I think it's food for thought because I think whether it is trying to keep relationships sweet or feeling like you're being, taken advantage of in friendships or looked over at work, we're all definitely a little bit guilty of self-silencing. And I think you're right. Stepping into our power. Yes. Let's manifest that for 2025. The word power to 4001 and I will send you the information on that.